Welcome to the Business Owner Spotlight. I am your host, Stephanie Scheller, bringing you incredible people every single week so you can make every day a lunch and learn. And guys, I got to tell you, okay, I'm super fangirling over here. So my very first TED event that I went to a couple of years ago, this lady did a talk there that it transformed how I present from the stage. And if you've seen how I present from the stage, I mean, I owe an awful lot to this lady, and we've never even gotten to talk really until now, so this is super cool for me. So, Kate, thank you for joining me.
Absolutely, man.
I know, right?
What a lead-in.
Now you got to follow that. So, tell us, and I know your TED Talk, obviously, but what do you do for this Business Owner Spotlight? What do you do with stickyknowledge.com?
I help people think better together. So I facilitate a thinking process. And yeah, so you're going.
I'm like, yeah, keep talking here.
Anytime someone needs to identify a problem, solve a problem, design a solution, understand something better, it works better with multiple perspectives in the room. But we often get hung up that our perspective is the right answer. So what I help people do is get beyond the personal ownership of their ideas, and focus their attention on the situation that they're trying to work through.
Okay, so I have spent the majority of this morning prepping this event that we're doing next weekend, which I know by the time this posts, it won't be next weekend. It will either be this weekend or last weekend. But we're doing exactly that. We're getting people together to get them to, we're calling it a mastermind, mastermind a solution to your business challenges, and we're doing it again in January. There's so much power behind what you're doing. I'm so excited about that. How did you get into that though? Because that's a little bit niche.
Yeah, it is niche and it isn't. So and that's one of the challenges. I know we'll get to that. So how I got I ride waves of things because I'm attracted to shiny. And so when I'm really in love with ideas and emerging ideas, and when one of those starts to come along and develop some momentum, I'm all in. So I'm a natural researcher. I'm rabidly curious. And so I'll just follow a train. One of the things that I think people don't do enough of is follow rabbit trails. And I think there's incredible wisdom and learning in rabbit trails that we can't predict. So as our filters, as all of this AI helps us filter information and direct information to exactly the kind of thing we need, we're losing the serendipity and the rabbit trail ability. And I think this is sort of a rabbit trail in itself. So I got to where I am by following a number of rabbit trails. One of them was I'm a word nerd from for decades, and I learn by writing. So I work very organically. And that became interesting, but it's very isolated. So it's really hard and there's a lot of ownership in language, loads of ownership.
Oh yeah.
And when I get just the right words and somebody says, you missed a plural here, the hackles come up. And it's not just for me, it's for most writers. So that's a really isolating environment. It's great for learning independently, but when you want to learn as a group, you have to work in a different medium. So that led me to this visual space, and So what I do is, what I love to do, the thing I love to do most is help people work in this visual environment. And it does a whole lot of things that are totally unconscious in the group. So one of the things it does is it removes ownership and places it onto this physical object, where now we all can work on the object because I'm no longer tied to the emotion within that concept.
Yeah. Oh, so that's how you got into, hey, let's draw it. I mean, I'm looking at the board behind you, right? I don't know if you were going to talk to us about that at some point here, but that's how you got into that, right? Is
that, and I went to so many boring meetings and I took notes at boring meetings to try and stay focused.
Oh my gosh, me too. That's people are laughing. They're like, you take ridiculous notes. I'm like, yes. The more notes I'm taking, the harder I'm trying to stay focused sometimes, usually. Although I'll get people where I'm like taking notes because I want to remember it. But usually, like if I'm like transcribing you word for word, that's when I'm really getting like lost in the weeds.
So I love and every time I talk to people about this, I get confirmation. So I love what you just said. With the rise of and the acceptance of sketchnoting, now it's okay to be doodling and drawing in meetings.
Right.
And it means that I don't go to boring meetings anymore, because even if the content is dull, I'm having a really good time.
So let's talk about this sketchnoting thing, because I love this idea and I feel like I need to be better at it because I use some pictures, but not tons. So how do you do this whole sketchnoting thing? Can you kind of walk our listeners through?
Well, so I'll show you.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool looking.
That's my notebook. And so that's how I capture the key concepts when I'm listening to learn something. And the first big rule, which I know you heard from the TED Talk, is be willing to be average. So
Yeah.
The big barrier in getting beyond this is oh man, my pictures don't look good. And that's not the point. The point is to get the pen on the paper, draw stick figures. You know how to draw a stick figure. Right. You know how to draw boxes. You know how to draw swirls. We attach meaning to these things, and the meaning remains linked to the object, to the picture, so that the recall goes way up. So the quality of the picture doesn't matter. What matters is that you're using a picture.
I love that.
Did you draw something?
You're right. I'm like, ooh, I want to draw now, but then I'm going to totally get distracted. No, like, I'll be over here. I'll be like, oh wait, I'm doing an interview. Hey. So in building this business out, what were some of the challenges that you came across to get to where you are now? You know, a TED speaker and obviously good at what you do. How did you get there? And what were the challenges? Yeah.
Well, so like I told you, I was a word nerd and a journalist and a technical editor in highly technical content. I could do it, and I'm good at it, but it's not much fun. And I shouldn't say that, should I? Pretend no one heard that.
It's only recorded. We're good.
So I was working for a satellite company out of Canada as a consultant, and I had the good fortune to meet some other consultants who were also working there. And one of the things that people who work in management consulting, especially at the big firms, is they learn to use diagrams to understand and convey really complex concepts. And one of them would go to the board, and this was like 20 years ago. One of them would go to the board and draw a 2x2 matrix and and I'd go, that's absolutely it. That's absolutely it. Let's throw away these 7 pages of text
and just use the graphic.
And it engaged more conversation. It was just brilliant. So I thought, okay, I don't want to work for one of these consulting companies, but I want to know what they know. And so I started to dig in on business diagrams. And once you start to pay attention, you know how focus is, right? It's everywhere.
Right.
And time passed. By now I was an instructional designer, so I'm helping people learn stuff. And then I went to a conference that blew my mind. So in 2007, there was the first ever International VizThink conference. And the guys that I had been following and studying and lusting after their brains were all there. And it was a small conference. It was people from around the world. And it was all about these tools for visual thinking. And I came home a changed person. And then I began to really, really dig in. I think it's an emerging field. The big challenge is people don't realize how serious it is. So it looks foolish, and we're so afraid of being foolish.
Yeah.
But it's serious stuff.
It really is, you know, and well, I'll leave that for after we turn off the record, but it really is. And we have to start getting better. But I've noticed, like, you know, from your talk, what I changed was, especially in my big 2-day seminar that we do, we don't use a PowerPoint. We've been in rooms that have the capability for PowerPoint. We don't even, because all I want to do is draw. And my other trainer was like, you know, Steph, we could put together a PowerPoint. And I'm like, yeah, but let's draw it out. You know, we can write some stuff on the board, but let's draw it. And people will remember those. And I haven't seen anybody else draw it down the same picture, but that was how I kind of got started with I was like, you know, we got to start getting people to remember stuff, right? There's no point in them paying me to come to a seminar if 6 months later they don't remember any of it. So it was just like, I think it's huge. And I think we have so much going on right now. We need different ways to tap into that side of our brain that does the memory.
So I love that. The other thing that's happening when you're drawing is you and the audience are present together, rather than you controlling the way they get to consume information. It's much more respectful.
I like that. I like that a lot. Because I think you're right. It is more respectful too, because it brings the audience in. It's kind of like all those videos you see on YouTube of someone like drawing and sketching, and you're like, what are they doing? And then they flip it upside down and it's amazing, right? But you're drawn into it. You're like, what is it going to be? What is it going to be? So I think it's awesome that you're teaching this. Now, you said you're using this inside of groups to help them think better, to not be so personal about what, their ideas. Could you maybe give us an example of how that works with these guys?
Yeah. So there's a lot to this. There's a whole lot so we trick our ego, we trick our psyche, we trick our filters when we draw. So we have very, very well developed verbal editors that are they're highly vigilant, and they're very careful that we think something, we critique it, we decide how it's going to come out, and it comes out. So we rarely say anything that surprises us. When we draw, that editor is not present. And so we tap much more fully into, it's not exactly subconscious, but it's into a body of working memory and long-term memory that we may not have active at all times. So you'll see things that you wouldn't hear, for example. So that's something that's really powerful when people draw, when I lead people through drawing problems. So one of the exercises that I do with people is to have them sketch 3 aspects of a problem. And what happens, and there's a little bit more to it, but it happens very, very quickly, And in the next step, where I have them describe their problem to a colleague who is not allowed to give any advice whatsoever, only to ask questions about the picture, right? So now we're talking about the picture. I would say 80 to 90% of the time, people see something about the problem that they go, something that was obvious and was completely hidden. And you see the lights come on.
Right.
So that's the tapping into this sort of hidden knowledge. And the other thing is they talk to complete strangers about really personal or powerful or big problems because it's not theirs. It's a piece of paper.
Yeah. So I don't have to feel so ashamed or embarrassed oh my gosh, that would be such a cool sales tactic too. Like if it's inside a sales environment for trying to get to, oh, how cool.
You know my big sales story, right?
No.
This one blows my mind. I did this for the Marriott North America had me in to do a conference for their directors of engineering. And they also had some partners there. And one of their partners, who actually sells electric power in multi-million dollar packages, said, we no longer let our salespeople travel with laptops and PowerPoint. We give them whiteboard markers and an eraser, and they draw the solution along with the customer. And what they tell us now is as soon as the customer picks up the pen, the deal's done.
Oh my gosh, how cool. Oh, I'm so using this. This is awesome.
I know, it's a mind blower.
It seriously is. So we're totally coming up on the end of our time here, and I'm super sad because I have so many more questions. But what would you say is your best piece of advice for other business owners out there who, what's the best thing you could give them?
I would say that if you have an inkling, an understanding, just a minimal understanding and curiosity about this technique, draw. And draw like you did when you were 6 or 8. And see what happens.
I love it. I will grab the link to your TED Talk and post it below as well, because I think everybody should. Honestly, I mean, I use it at the front of the room, but what you've just done was made this so tangible to every part. So I think this is fantastic. I love it.
Thanks.
So thank you so much for taking time. I know you have a lot going on as always, but thank you for taking time to sit down with me today. I enjoyed this interview an awful lot.
Absolutely. Yeah, this was big fun.
So for our listeners out there, what can I tell you? Go out there and you know what? Here's the deal. And I say this at the end of almost all of these, but don't tune me out, because your life is exactly what you decide to make it. Your life is as great as you want to make it, or you can focus on the negative, and guess what you are going to continue to have. So what I want to encourage you to do is go out there, and whatever your future currently holds for you, you have the ability to change it. Take control. Draw like a child. Make it part of your life. I look forward to hearing from you guys again soon on the next Business Owner Spotlight.